Well, welcome everyone to NAMI at noon. I'm Amy Brundle. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications here at NAMI, North Carolina. And we are so pleased to have everyone here for today's webinar. We had to take a little bit of a break through the spring, but it is so good to be back. And thank you all so much for making the time to join us. First of all, as always, we'd like to thank the North Carolina Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services for their support of today's webinar. A couple of housekeeping items, especially if you haven't been here with us before. If you have any questions for our speaker today, please put them in the chat section or the Q&A section down below, and we will answer them towards the end of the presentation. We will be sending out any materials that the speaker provides by tomorrow evening, as well as a recording and a feedback survey, so that you can tell us how much you enjoyed this experience. And now I would like to introduce today's speaker. She is a friend of mine and a co-advocate for mental illness, Jesslyn McCutcheon. Jesslyn is a board-certified mental health coach, author, speaker, and founder of Fighting Goliath for Mental Illness Ministries. She's the author of Fighting Goliath, Slaying the Giant of Bipolar Disorder, and has lived with bipolar 1 for over 25 years. Drawing on her lived experience and faith, Jesslyn helps women and their families find hope and stability. She lives in King with her husband and three daughters. Welcome, Jesslyn. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. Thank you.
So, we're going to get started by just kind of starting right at the beginning, talking about your personal experiences with bipolar disorder. Can you tell us a little bit about what led to your diagnosis? Like, what were you experiencing in your life before kind of getting that clarity?
Absolutely. Looking back, there were signs that something wasn't quite right for quite a while. I had just graduated college and I had just taken my first professional job, which was in sales. And I noticed that in my daily getting ready, that it started to become a struggle. It started to become heavy to get out of bed every day. But I've always been a fighter. I've always been one of those people, I'm going to push through this. So I chose to keep pushing through it, no matter how hard it felt. And it felt like at times there were weights around my ankles, and it was just, how am I going to get from getting up and putting my feet on the ground to this over here on this side of the room? But I kept doing it, and I kept trying to go on about my daily business and getting to work, to the point one day came where I showed up to work and I was in the same outfit as the day before. And I was not able to get ready that morning as I normally do. The energy wasn't there. I was not able really to brush my hair. There was not a lick of makeup on. Obviously, it looked like I slept in my clothes, in which I did. And it looked like something was severely wrong. And that day, my boss called me in his office and he sat me down, and he was very kind and gentle and generous and compassionate. But he said, I know something's going on with you. And right now, I need you to go and get yourself well. So when you get yourself well, you can come back here and do your job well again. And I didn't have a lot to say back, because here's the thing. I really didn't understand what was going on with me. I was having these symptoms that I had never felt before. And that day, when we had that conversation, I went out the door that day and I never looked back. I never came back to that job, even though that boss was very kind and said, once you get back up on your feet again, your job will be right here waiting for you. I never went back. From the day I left, I went back to my apartment that day, and things every day got significantly worse. They would continue to spiral, where I would go back. I went back in my room that day. I closed the door, I closed the blinds, I crawled back into bed, and each day got severely worse. I had a roommate at the time who noticed that the situation was getting really bad and really out of hand, where I was not getting up at all. I was not eating at all. I'm a normal healthy person. I weigh like 135 for my height, but I got down to 96 pounds, where I was not eating. And she was becoming severely, severely worried. And she would knock on my door and she'd be like, please let me call your parents. Please let me call your parents for help. And I'd be like, no, I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna get through it, you know? It got to the point where she couldn't take it anymore and she called my parents. My parents did come and get me. They moved me back home. And I was in such a place of severe depression that for me, I couldn't see a way out. Symptoms for me during that time were worthlessness of myself because of my situation and hopelessness of myself because of the situation and how dark the darkness just surrounded me. I honestly did not see a way out. And the amount of pain that I had been in for that previous month and going home to live with my parents, it just continued to get worse and worse and worse to the point where I decided, and I had never been in this position before. I'd never, ever even thought this before because I lived such a great life up to this point that I didn't want to live anymore. And I attempted to take my life. And that's what led to my first hospitalization to to piece by piece trying to put this all together. What the heck was going on here? Um, I often, tell people today that in the beginning of it all, you don't know what's going on. And, but once you do actually receive a diagnosis, at times it feels like it could define you, but it does not, you know? Um, I didn't realize for a very long time that after receiving my diagnosis, which didn't happen till years later, and I know we'll probably get to this, but that was essentially only the beginning of my healing journey. So the symptoms in the beginning started with very, very severe depression for me.
Yeah. And, so you've talked a little bit about that, about how people were noticing changes in your mood, your behavior, your appearance, and a lot of those pointed towards the depressive side of that cycle.
Yeah.
What are some other symptoms that could indicate bipolar disorder in somebody else that might manifest itself differently in another person?
Um, I think it's important to understand that bipolar disorder is different for everyone. Obviously, it's a mood disorder, and bipolar disorder is very complex. It's a serious mental health condition that causes these dramatic shifts in our moods, right? Our energy levels, our ability to think clearly, our ability to function and to flourish as a human being, to live a fulfilled life. And this, once you are diagnosed with bipolar disorder, are some things you experience up to getting that diagnosis, like I did over those 3 years, were severe manic symptoms to go along with the severe depression. And when I say manic, I mean like unusual high energy, or like you're on top of the world, or you can conquer these things that are just not really reality at times, You can go for a very long time with needing very little sleep, or in the beginning, sleeping too much, which at the beginning it was depression and it got looked at just as severe depression. Racing thoughts, talking more quickly and faster than you normally do. Impulsive behavior such as excessive spending, risky behaviors, difficulty concentrating. And if I were to share an example of that, while I had moved back home with my parents up till the point of my diagnosis, there were many times because I didn't know what was going on with me. I didn't know how to speak about it. I didn't know how to express myself about it. I would take off in my car by myself, not telling anyone. And I would drive very fast. I was pulled over multiple times for driving too fast for my risky behavior behind the wheel. And I was never out to hurt anyone. But that's what I mean when you can have these risky tendencies and risky behaviors. And then you got the other end of the spectrum, which I started having in the very beginning, You can have that persistent sadness or that persistent hopelessness, that worthlessness feeling that you don't know, how you're going to make it through, how you're going to get out of the pit. You have that fatigue and that loss of energy, um, changes in your appetite, feelings of death or suicide. And concentrating has always been a huge issue for me in the depression state, but also in my everyday state too. It's a severe symptom of living with bipolar disorder. And somehow
Yeah.
over the years, I've learned to cope with when that happens and that concentration breaks, how to get myself back to the present moment again. So those are some symptoms of the mania, and you can have the hypomania, which is a lesser form of that manic, never really reaching that peak of that mania, and then those depressive symptoms.
Yeah. So I would imagine that since there's such a wide range of symptoms, it can be difficult to really kind of secure that diagnosis that fits, that kind of explains what you've been experiencing. So you kind of alluded to the fact that it took a while to get that secured for yourself. Yeah. So once you finally kind of got the diagnosis and you started working on a treatment plan, what were some of your initial thoughts or fears? Like, how did you feel like that was going to start impacting your life?
Oh my gosh. When I initially got the diagnosis of the bipolar one, I was grateful for the fact that I could put my symptoms with a diagnosis. So I
Mhm.
was grateful for that. And I was grateful for the fact that we were going to start treating me for the bipolar disorder and not just the severe depression in the beginning or the OCD that I was diagnosed with in the beginning, which is this obsessive compulsive disorder. And a thing with bipolar disorder too is that you can have these coexisting conditions that go along with bipolar disorder too. And one of mine is having OCD. But the fearful things that I really feared what lied ahead for my future. I really feared if I was going to be able to ever go back into a career again and work. I really feared that I was ever going to meet somebody that would want to marry me, living with this serious condition that I have. Um, During this time, I didn't know what I was dealing with myself. I was just trying to navigate this all myself. My family had no idea what was going on. There was so much newness to this all. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear. And I even feared the spirituality side that I had. Well, I've been a Christian for forever, and my faith means everything to me. But I feared having those conversations and getting in with those conversations with people telling me that my faith wasn't enough,
Mm.
that I didn't have a great enough faith, or um, yeah, that my faith was weak, that I was lacking going into the word or getting what I needed added to the word when little do they know how many times I spent on my knees begging and pleading, and how many times I spent in the word. But it was for some reason that God still wanted me there to go through that journey to get the answer that I wasn't able to get yet. It was all part of the healing process, you know. Um, and I just feared my overall future and what it was going to be to actually live a fulfilled life. And was I ever going to be able to achieve that? And also having children. I always wanted to be a mom, and I feared whether I was going to be able to have children of my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what parts of your life did change after you kind of embarked on your healing journey?
Oh gosh, every part of my life changed once I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Um, it's a condition that requires a lifelong journey,
Mm.
a lifelong process of doing what you need to do to live and flourish. Um, my relationship changed with a lot of people over time, especially when I was going through very difficult seasons. A lot of people did not understand. I lost many relationships. I lost many friendships because at the time I was just trying to, it was too much for me when people couldn't understand. I was going through too much myself to try to even comprehend that when you add on people who aren't really understanding, it made it even that much worse. You know,
Yeah.
my relationships changed with a lot of people, and with the relationships, then came the stigma. Um, my family and I, again, from the beginning, it was just very difficult trying to navigate through that and working together. But at the same time, I am very grateful for the support system of my family and those friends who did stick with me through the hardest times and through those dark times and still do today. If you want to know who a real friend is there for you in the darkness when you can't see. And I am grateful and I am thankful for that, much more today than I was back then because I couldn't see it back then. When your friends and your family can be a light when you can't see the light yourself.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, can you tell us about, you told us a little bit about some relational stigma that you may have experienced through this. And I think any of us who have gone through the journey of trying to figure out how to live with a mental illness has experienced some of that. Can you tell us any more about other types of stigma you may have experienced while you were, working your way through some of this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to mention, and I think it's important to say, with the whole stigma, I've learned this along my journey and just educating myself that research has been done to show that 50% of people who do endure stigma do not get the help that they need,
Mhm.
right? That's why it's so important to have these conversations and to be, it's hard to be this vulnerable and to be this honest. And I actually never thought I would get to this point to be able to have this conversation with you and whomever else is listening on this webinar. It took me 20 years to finally get to that point after having to discover things within myself. And the stigma was, it was because of the stigma. A lot of it was
Mhm.
because of the stigma. I got back into a professional career. I was scared to death to ever be honest with anybody when I had to run to the bathroom because I was under so much stress that I was having a panic attack. That I had to do this all by myself, in isolation, all by myself in a bathroom stall, and then come back out, put myself together, and act like I was perfectly professionally fine again. And guess what? I did that. And I learned to do it well because this is what happens to people when stigma surrounds them is that they put on this mask and they put on this facade about them that this is how they have to be in order to survive because these people aren't going to get it. They're not going to understand. That was a huge challenge for me, and it was in my professional career. And I was also afraid within applying for jobs, I was going to be looked at negatively if I was honest and forthright with exactly with what was going on with me. That was stigma. I've also experienced stigma in the times that I had to be hospitalized. There was one time where I was not hospitalized for my mental health. I was hospitalized for my physical health. And during that time, I was in the ER. And the nurse who was helping me was very kind and very sweet. And the oh gosh, the CNA came in to deliver more gowns that you need to put on or whatever. And there were different colors. I was in these blue like scrubs, blue gown, as I remember, and then he had green ones as well. Well, if anybody knows, if you've been to the hospital before, I have I hate grippy socks. I will always hate grippy socks that they give you to wear around. And I don't like wearing those scrubs that they give you, but they gave us green scrubs when I was hospitalized for mental health. Okay. So this gentleman comes in and he had the blue and he had the green and he went to hand her the green. And this nurse out of her mouth said, "No, I don't need the green scrubs. Those go down the hall to the crazy one down the hall." Those exact words came out of that nurse's mouth. And I was floored. I didn't know what to say, but I did say, I mustered up the words to say and look at her again and say, I've had to wear those green scrubs many times in this exact hospital until we finally found out what was wrong with me and the diagnosis, you know. Um, there's stigma attached, it feels like everywhere you go. We have wonderful mental health professionals and wonderful mental health providers, but even within that, you endure stigma at times because people don't understand fully what it means to live with bipolar disorder or what it means to live with any type of mental illness, you know? I think that's the biggest thing is the understanding and the awareness. It's kind of like we're never going to like I will fully never understand what it means to lose one of my children because that has not happened in my life. That tragically has not happened in my life. But at the same time, people can't put themselves exactly in the shoes of somebody living with bipolar disorder or another mental illness because they have not been there. And we live in this world today where we're kind of really selfish. Like if it doesn't happen to me, I don't really want to know much about it. You know what I mean? I don't really want to dig deep into finding more about it to educate myself about it. And I feel with mental health as a whole, it is the most underlooked mental health as a whole for people to look at and have the compassion to understand to be able to help others, you know? And that is what we need so badly. It breaks my heart to see the stigma around mental health. And I know we'll talk about this later when my life finally became full circle, but that is why I am so passionate about where I am today and who I work with today. And here's the key, is finding your people when you're not there yourself yet, finding your people who understand. Because as we all know, living with bipolar disorder requires multiple things, but medication is never going to be a cure. It helps to stabilize us at times when we need it, and it helps stabilize people like me who may need to be on medication for the rest of their life, you know? But there are many factors that come under this umbrella of living with living with bipolar disorder. But what I lacked very much so for many years, and it took me many years to find this out, how the significance of community and how important finding your people are, because whether you want to believe it or not, it's actually life-saving for many people because I've lived it and it was life-saving for me at one time.
Yeah, I think that's a huge message is find your community um and it may not be your family and it may not be the friends you grew up with, but you find your community and you've got that support system in place.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that's super important. You alluded to this a little bit, but I'd like to hear a little more about your treatment journey as much as you're comfortable sharing and kind of what may have worked for you and what didn't, because as most of us know, this can be a trial and error game.
you just took the words out of my mouth.
Oh,
No, that's exactly what it is. And until I became so vocal and so passionate about this, I would have never have shared that my treatment progress with anyone, you know. But for me, in the beginning of my journey, it was horrific. It was trying to find that medication that was going to work for me. The medications that we all know, a lot of those, I had to be on an antipsychotic medication at one time. They have significant side effects. Um, a lot of drugs for bipolar disorder have significant side effects, and it seemed like to me that I was sensitive to almost every one of them. They tried me on Lamictal at one point and I broke out in a rash from my head to my toes. It looked like I was a burn victim from my head to my toes. You have to be very, very careful with these medications, and it's very important that you note what all these side effects are, even when you're not kind of in the mood to do that and not where you need to be for when you get back with your psychiatrist. To have that meeting with your psychiatrist, you're prepared. In the beginning, I was never prepared. I wasn't noting my moods from day to day. I wasn't noting how my medications were affecting me. I went in there and I didn't talk much. Where does that get you? Not very far. So your psychiatrist can't treat you, it's a two-way conversation on both sides, and it's also important to find that fit. So there was a time even I was fired from a psychiatrist. Believe it or not, I was fired because I did not want to listen to the medical treatment plan he had for me. But even at that time, I didn't want to believe that I needed to be on those medications, you know?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until way later in my journey and into me really learning about what bipolar disorder is. And actually, it led me to one point working on the NAMI National Helpline, where you go through this training and you learn all these terms to help you, to help other people. But one term I had never heard of before, and I did not fully get or grasp or understand was the term anosognosia.
Mm-hmm.
And the term anosognosia means that people who are living with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, those who might suffer from dementia or stroke, their neurological condition can't perceive certain things. Their frontal lobe is not working at 100% like a normal frontal lobe would work, you know? For me, for example, like with the medications, my doctor would start me on a medication. I would start it. I'd get maybe back up on my feet again and think, hey, I'm good. I don't want to take this anymore. I don't even want to deal with this anymore. And I would take myself off of it. It was a virtual pattern for me consistently. It went round and round. And when I heard that term, it went on like a light bulb. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was doing that for years. It's so true. So if y'all have never heard of that term and want to look into it deeper, look into that. NAMI has information about that. There's a Henry Amador nonprofit. He does his work all around that. And so it's very interesting. Part of my process of getting well too, first, I had to accept that I lived with bipolar disorder, because as we all know, our family wants to help us as much as I can. Our close friends, they want to help fix us, but there's no fixing it. And everybody gets frustrated because there's no fixing it. How do we help people that we can't fix? What can we do? I had to accept that I actually lived with, and I even hate the word mental illness, but I had to accept the fact that I did. And for myself, I was going to need to do everything that I could to learn about it so I could flourish as a human and flourish in my life to go after the dreams and goals that I wanted and always had planned for, you know? And let me just tell you, when you realize that and you do find the right treatment plan, you do find your people, you do find the health care that fits and works with you, because we all know it's different for everyone. What works for me is not going to necessarily work for somebody else. But that's the thing. That's what you have to keep fighting for every day, is to keep that hope that you're going to get there, to find where all those puzzle pieces fit, because it can happen. And y'all, I am living proof it can happen. I am. I today live a very fulfilled life. I'm still on this journey, but I've learned what those red flags are. Anytime a red flag goes up, I know what I need to do to take care of it. I know when to pull back. I know when to say no. I know when to leave toxic people, that don't help your overall health. I know when you just know certain things That's what you have to know. You have to know yourself so well to get well. So,
Yeah, I think that's such an important message that you brought up is that sometimes success in a mental health journey is not a cure or
correct.
remission. It is acceptance of your new normal and thriving despite the challenges that you've come across.
That's true. That's correct.
Yeah.
And yeah, and don't let anybody ever tell you differently because, like we already said, it does not define you. It does not define you at all as a person and what you are capable of. Because I truly believe we are all capable of what our hopes and dreams are, you know?
Mhm.
And for those who are devout Christians and for those who believe this, God gives us a specific assignment, each one of us, a specific assignment that He wants to see fulfilled in all of us. And I finally saw it one day, and it came full circle for me one day. And actually, you guys might think, some of you might think I'm just absurd for even saying this, but living with bipolar disorder has been one of the greatest gifts of my life because now I'm able to help other people with what I couldn't see many years ago or thought that I was ever going to be well enough to help somebody else. It's a gift to do what we do today. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about that full circle moment. Let's talk about what prompted you to start your organization Fighting Goliath and what kind of services or support do you guys provide?
Gosh, what prompted me to start it was, first of all, going through your journey, you find different things that are going to work for you. And many things that worked for me over the years was I've always been a journaler. I always loved to write. I always loved to journal when I couldn't express my thoughts any other way or couldn't speak to other people about it. I could write them down and I could journal them down. I also learned the acceptance of gratitude because I wasn't thankful for many years. I wasn't thankful to live in the pain I was living in. I wasn't thankful to have to go through the trial and error period. I could not see the goodness in that. I couldn't see the goodness in that at all. All I saw was pain, and never finding a way out or never getting that future. Um, so when it came full circle for me, little by little, I knew as I started getting well and as I started becoming more vocal and finding my people and the network of people around me that helped me realize this and make this happen, that it helped me to stay well as well. It's a part of my healing to do the ministry we have today, which is Fighting Goliath for mental illness. Our ministry helps women who live with bipolar disorder and their families who are affected by bipolar disorder. There's no discrimination. We're not leaving guys out. We're just a little more specialized on the women's side. So, guys, you're still welcome. Um, but some of our services include we meet every month in person at our local YMCA here. I live in King, North Carolina, so we meet here monthly. And it's finding your people. And I'll tell you, y'all, it makes a difference. So if you do not have a support group, if you've not found your people, try to get into a support group because there are people who actually do get it and understand, really. And it makes a huge difference. And so we offer that service. We offer free coaching for women who can't afford to go see a mental health professional at that time, or they're waiting to get an appointment to be seen by a mental health professional because we know the overload of our mental health professionals, right? And how much they already have. And there's not enough to go around for the hurt and the need of those living with mental health and mental illness. So we wanted to be that gap filler, to just be able to be there and walk alongside people until that appointment came, to give them that community that they need until they reach that appointment or till they reach their next appointment with their psychologist. We don't by any means try to be mental health professionals because we know we're not. That is not a part of what we do. But what we can offer is the coaching and the training that we have. So our coaches are certified through the American Association of Christian Counseling, and they must be certified to be able to be a coach. We are grounded in Christ. We are a Christian organization. But the thing is, too, we know that bipolar disorder is a serious medical condition that requires what you need to do medically, okay? But we also believe in the power of what it can do spiritually when you combine those two together and they intersect and interlock together. And that's what our whole organization is built upon, is that intersection to bring that wholeness and to bring that human flourishing. Um, Other things we do is we have a growing collection of blogs. Please, if you're ever interested in writing for Fighting Goliath or submitting a blog or sharing your story, just email us. We would love to feature that. Articles and educational resources we offer. We offer monthly Hope Talk webinars where we have those with lived experience or those professionals in the mental health field, the experts that can come in and pour wisdom over all of us. We have authors that come on who have written about mental health and share their stories. You know, it's a very it's a very powerful, I believe, time every time that we are given to be able to spend together on one of those webinars or to be able to spend together in person, because whether you want to believe it or not, we're not meant to do this by ourselves. We're meant to do this in a community. We were never meant to do that way from the beginning. God never intended for us to live that alone and to fight this all alone. We know that. We also do referrals and connections, to the professional mental health services and when additional support is needed. And we do speaking engagements for churches, conferences, retreats, and community organizations to help increase the mental health awareness and to reduce the stigma, especially within the faith communities. Obviously, Fighting Goliath is the
Right.
name of our organization. You guys know the story of Fighting Goliath, but the reason for that name too, and the reason behind the book is because that's exactly what living with bipolar disorder or any mental health condition is. You are fighting this giant. And sometimes you look at it and you wonder, how is it going to be possible? How is it ever going to be to fall? Well, I can honestly say it fell for me. The last piece of the puzzle I was missing after I figured out medically what I needed to do to stay where I needed to be was to have the trust 100% in the God who could heal me. And so yeah, those are our services of our organization. And I don't want to give off the wrong impression that I am going to be miraculously healed. I believe God can heal anybody in anything. But I also believe for some, and I believe in with my condition, that sometimes the thorn is left in your side to keep your eyes fixed upon the one who is only capable of leaving you where you need to be in your life. And I need that to do the type of work that I'm doing today within our organization. So I am grateful and I'm thankful for the thorn. And I am thankful that finally, through it all, the gift of fighting Goliath for mental illness was given. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's powerful work, and we really appreciate, what you're doing to advocate for people who have, not just bipolar disorder, but a wide range of mental illnesses. And so, we appreciate the work that you and your group is doing to bring more awareness. Why is this awareness so important to you? And why did we've talked about fighting Goliath and the kind of work you are doing. Why do you think that this is such a timely thing to be working on right now?
I think this is such a timely thing because, first of all, it is much needed. The need is huge. The need is I don't even, I mean, it's massive. Um, it's so important because I lived it. I lived it myself and I live it from day to day. I've lived it firsthand. I've seen it. I've seen what I have been through. I've seen what my family has been through, but I've also seen recovery. And I have felt and touched that hope. And now where I used to didn't have that hope, when the worthlessness and doubts and all that fear would creep in, I now have the solid hope that I need. That even when I have my bad days, I'm going to be able to continue to go forward. There's another day tomorrow, and I can start again tomorrow if it doesn't work on that day. Celebrate, celebrate those hard days and those little things that you are able to do in the days. For the days you are struggling and suffering from depression where you can't put your feet on the ground, if you do put your feet on the ground, celebrate that. If you do make it to brush your teeth, celebrate that. People do not understand who've never been there, the lack of energy that just comes over you from your head to toe, that even a simple task as brushing your teeth feels impossible on
Mm.
days like that. So just don't ever forget to celebrate those little moments because I still have those little moments on certain days, but also never give up. Never ever give up and hold on to that hope of getting well and being able to live a fulfilled life, and hold on to the word of God. Um, a lot of people over time have said to me, well, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do if somebody, would start talking to me. And here's the thing I've learned too. You don't have to have the right words. A lot of times people just want your presence.
Mhm.
People don't want your perspective. They just want your presence. They don't want you to diagnose them. They just want somebody to walk alongside of them. And I think that's just really important to know that we all, even if we're not a mental health professional, even if we don't think we know what we need to say, we all have a role we can still play. And sometimes not saying anything is the greatest gift that you can give, to just let that person know that you care and that you are still there. And also, I would add to that is just to words mean a lot. Is if you're going to say something to somebody, put action behind it. Don't just say it, you know, actually put the action behind it and follow up with the words coming out of your mouth because it can be life-changing for many when you do that. And you check in on your loved one who you think something's not quite right. They're struggling. You send them a letter or leave them a casserole on the door and just leave it. Ring the doorbell, doorbell ditch. Leave the casserole and run.
Mhm.
Because there's times, when you're in that state of depression, getting out of bed again is hard, and getting to that door is hard. But maybe 5 hours later, you do get out of bed, and you did hear that doorbell earlier that morning. So you go to open the door, and when you go to open the door and you see a card there or a casserole there, it's hard to explain how that feels. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We encourage people just ask the question. Just if you're worried about somebody, ask the question because, in your story and so many other stories, it took that person asking the question to get you to realize that what you were experiencing wasn't necessarily what you could be experiencing. It wasn't necessarily quote unquote normal, and that maybe you should, you know, start that journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a few questions from folks that we want to bring up for you.
Okay.
This has been a great conversation, and we're going to keep it going with a little bit of audience questions here. So, one is how can faith communities do a better job at ministering to families who have a loved one that's struggling with a mental health crisis?
Oh my gosh, faith communities have the biggest giant opportunity here because y'all, what I also learned that faith communities is often for many people your first point of contact. You want to go see your pastor and talk to him. You want to go see that deacon, your deacon family, and talk to them. So what the faith communities need to understand is how great this need is, and to have the resources needed in the church, and to not shy away from talking about mental health within the church. For mental health to be talked about from the top down, the pastor in that church to not shy away from preaching on mental health, you know? It's just like physical health. When people understand that mental illness shouldn't be treated any different than physical illness, my goodness, so many other people could get the help that they need, because that's where they rely on. They rely on their church, those trusted people they want to be with. And if we can have those resources, ignite that conversation and the awareness, and to have stigma-free communities and churches. We're not asking for it to replace the professional help, but just to start the conversation, and to know that it's okay, that you're not struggling with this all alone, and you're not going out those doors to the church because you're facing this all alone, and you can't handle hearing certain things, or you can't handle singing some worship songs anymore because you're fighting this all alone, when you need to be fighting this with your church, who are your church family, and they need to understand how they can help with you during this time. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, Fighting Goliath can provide some of those resources, and I'll put in a plug. NAMI also provides a lot of those resources.
Yes.
We have gone into faith communities of all faiths to go in and, you know, counsel clergy, counsel congregants on how to be um, that supportive resource, how to have resources on hand, how to know your limitations, when it comes to, how much you can do to minister to a family in need. So, all of that is available. So please contact one of us, or I think we've got somebody putting some other helpful resources in the chat. Just reach out, become informed.
Absolutely. And I second that. I became very involved. NAMI was my first point of finding my people. Honestly. And NAMI will always hold a special place in my heart. And I'm, affiliated with the NAMI here in our area, NAMI Northwest Piedmont. But in the Bridges of Hope program that you're talking about with NAMI, it's excellent for churches to know of, and to become aware of, to bring this kind of awareness into the church. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another question is, what are some things that you do daily or weekly that add to your rhythm of experiencing healing?
Okay. Honestly, I have started to do this, and it really does help me, is keeping a gratitude journal. Is every day at the end of the day, writing down three things, that you are thankful for that day. Like today, this will be in my gratitude journal tonight. I am thankful for this webinar, and I am thankful for this conversation. And I'm just thankful so much for this opportunity from you and NAMI. It's just beyond wonderful. But to write down three things at the end of the day, right? And to do this consistently for 3 to 6 weeks. If you do this consistently for 3 to 6 weeks, research has been done on this. It reduces your stress. It can reduce some of your depression. It can make you be a more happy and thankful person, even when you are in the pit.
Mm.
There's something to be thankful for within every single day.
Mm.
And that's a huge part. That was a huge part of my healing process too, was learning what gratitude was, Um, uh, I have to read you this. Angelo has this quote on thankfulness that stays with me. And I wrote it down to share with you today if we had this opportunity. But she said at one point, let gratitude be the pillow upon which you kneel to say your nightly prayer. And when I first heard that quote, I thought it was so powerful, and it is so powerful. So that gratitude journal, Sorry, that was very long-winded. My husband tells me I do that sometimes. He's like, get to the point, honey. Um, anyway, that knowing how to take care of yourself, take your medication if you have to take your medication. Go out and take that walk. Get out into nature. God gave us this beautiful nature to look at every day. Go absorb that. Get into nature. You can do grateful walking, thankfulness walking, and it's very helpful. Um, Find your creative side. There's many those who live with bipolar disorder who are very, very creative. So many people in our support group are some of the most creative people I've ever seen in what they do to express their creativeness to help them as they are healing, you know? Um, Find what that is. Find what it is that works for you, that is your creative outlet. Another thing is my faith. My faith I go to every single morning. I cannot start a day without giving it all to God. I cannot end a day without giving it all to God. And when you do these things consistently and for over a certain period of time, you're going to see the difference. When you make a routine out of this, and what has helped me and I've learned is when I stay on a consistent routine, it helps me to stay on that consistent routine. Get up and make your bed. If you don't think making your bed's important, if you live with bipolar disorder, it is very important. Make that bed so you don't see it to get back into. So if you're feeling down and you do get out of bed, it's hard because even with it made, I know there's days you just want to lay right back down. But that's a step. It's those little steps and figuring out
Right.
what those little steps are and that healing is that uniquely works for you. But those are some of the things that I do consistently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our other two questions are kind of based on our discussion of I never know how to say this word, anosognosia, uh, and kind of the ramifications of that. So, for instance, can you tell a potential way to get somebody out of the house to go see a doctor, like if they're struggling?
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard. There are many times that my parents had to basically almost drag me out of the house, no shoes, to get to my doctor's appointments. Y'all, bipolar disorder takes patience, it takes understanding, and it takes compassion um, to think through it all and to go from day to day. I don't think there's anything concrete that I can say specifically there because I think it's specifically different for each person. But if we do the things that we know to do that, research has told us, our experts have told us, when we start doing those little things, it becomes easier to get that person to the doctor's appointment. And it becomes easier. I I know when that person just doesn't, it's so hard to get a person out of bed when they don't want to get out of bed. And when it goes on for all the time, it's like, how do you get them out of bed? But this is where I go back to the thing. You cannot fix that person until that person wants to get well and accept it and accept the steps that they need to take to get well. It will be, and I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer here, it will be like a repeated cycle going round and round. You have to want to get well. You have to accept that you live with this. You have to educate yourself, do everything you can to fight, fight, fight. And once you do that, the family who loves you so much, who are always there for you and consistently continue to be there for you, it will become easier going forward. It's really hard. It's really hard to answer that because I know it's so uniquely different for each situation. It's
Yeah.
so
And this question is kind of similar. This mother of a son with bipolar one is kind of asking how she can help her son embrace the idea of attending a support group because right now he is not, uh, well, he craves to be around quote unquote normal people, so doesn't want to be around others like him, even though I've expressed that others suffering from mental illness are the ones that will most likely understand what he's going through and be accepting. Can you talk a little bit about how important it was for you to be around people who understood what your situation was?
Absolutely. And the first time you do this, it is going to be hard. It's letting people into the most vulnerable side of you, you know? Um, and the first time I did this was actually again with NAMI, with your In Our Own Voice program. I took that training and I saw that I was, as each story started to unfold, that I was actually with a group of people that understood, and we wanted to all cheer for one another and be there for one another. And even though after that training, that was like the beginning part of everything for me, no, it initially didn't make me just change all of a sudden to want to jump into support groups, but you have to start somewhere. And when you start somewhere and you find those people and you see a little bit of a light, that's what you need. You just need to see a little bit of that light. And as I continue to go forward, um, and continue to get involved in support groups or finding the right people, um, my load became a little lighter for
Hmm.
me. You know, it's very difficult to want to be that vulnerable, and it's hard, but just keep encouraging your son. It was life-saving for me. And that's why I do so well now because I've found the help and healing that I need. And now my story helps other people. And at the same time, it helps me. So if he can get over that and discover that for himself, oh my gosh. I believe that everybody who lives with this type of pain um, or anybody, what they've gone through with their pain, we all have the opportunity to help somebody at some point in our life with our story. So if I wanted to do that, I wanted to do that for others. If it just even helped one person, um, it was well worth it to finally come clean. And not only that, it just, for me, it was like these weights just being lifted off of me because I carried it for so long by myself. I knew I didn't have to do it anymore. And I knew this, I didn't have to be embarrassed that, other people were fighting this too. And we're going to be there to fight together with one another. Makes life a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's true for any challenge that we're walking through,
Yeah.
is that community makes it better. On that note, I'm putting the Fighting Goliath email address in the chat in case anybody wants to follow up after the fact. And Jesslyn, we just want to thank you so much for this talk. Thank you for your advocacy work. Thank you for your support of people who are walking the same journey that you walked. We appreciate you sharing your time today. This has been really beneficial, and I think everybody is leaving with a little extra dose of inspiration. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah. Again, everyone, thank you so much for coming today. We're going to be sending out the recording of this session and a feedback survey. We'd love to get your thoughts on that. We'll be sending that out by the end of the day tomorrow. Um, Also, keep an eye out for information for our next NAMI at Noon session, which will be on July 16th. We will be talking to Gabrielle Ito, who is uh, she is very popular advocate and influencer with autism and ADHD, and she'll be talking about how those conditions intersect with mental health conditions and what providers need to know to be able to treat effectively. So, again, we appreciate everybody being here, and we hope to see you at the next session. Thank you so much.